Hello, and welcome to What We Learned This Week, where we talk about what we learned this week. I'm Ryan Harp.
I'm Anika.
I'm Selma.
Who wants to get us started?
I'll start. Okay, so I mentioned this to you earlier, but for my capstone in American Studies, it's called the Williamsburg Documentary Project. We're not making a documentary, but we're documenting oral histories. And a while back, I got to see my TA do it in action, where she interviewed the historian at the First Baptist Church, like a majority black. It's like a black church, and I think it's like the first church and the first black church in Williamsburg, if I'm not remembering wrong. And Mrs. Montgomery, the historian, is like a living, walking piece of history. It's kind of crazy to see, we actually were supposed to watch RTA interview her for an hour, but because she had so much to share, I stayed an hour after on top of that and walked her to her car with everybody else, just still continuing the conversation. But so she talked a lot about her career as a singer in jazz and music, and that she got to tour the whole country. She got to see the Apollo Theater. She did a lot in that aspect, and she kind of switched over into when she moved to Williamsburg and started settling down with her husband. She became what do you call, I think an accountant, or not an accountant, what's it called, but she worked in banking and helped manage a bank and create two banks in Williamsburg. And then there's just so much there to unpack, because she talked about how she had been hired as a manager for a bank, and because of discrimination and stuff, there were two white women who were supposed to work under her who had quit because they were we're not working under a black woman. And then we go into her history at the First Baptist Church, and I think she's been there for 50 years. She's been there for a very long time. And I got to ring the bell there. I forgot to bring my phone. I could have showed you a picture, because she made us all take photos of us ringing the bell at the church. Yeah, so it was crazy to see all that history come out within 1-2 hours, and through an interview. I don't know, it was just really cool. There was a lot. There was so much more I did not say that had happened. I can't encapsulate it in a couple minutes.
It's really cool. I think one thing that I learned this week in my psych class, I'm taking social psych this semester, and we were talking about sort of this tendency that some people have to I forget the exact term, which is bad because I have a quiz on this later this week.
Uh-oh.
But it's basically the tendency that people have to sort of almost self-sabotage in advance of something that they're anticipating, and as a way to kind of shift the blame from or shift their make it so that in their mind it's oh, I failed because of this reason and not because I'm inherently just bad at it or flawed. So for instance, someone might go and party the night before they have an exam.
Okay.
And then the next morning when they have the exam and they don't do as well, it's either they do well and it's oh my gosh, I still did amazing even though I party I must be super smart, or it's the other way where they did bad, but they're oh yeah, but if I hadn't done that then I probably would have done better, so it's not me, it's just what it was just that thing that made me do that. So it's so apparently that's an actual psychological phenomenon where people just actually sabotage themselves a little bit to shift the blame from themselves, and it's really interesting because I feel that ties into a fear of failure and that kind of thing, and I feel that also ties into procrastination, because I've always had a tendency to procrastinate, and I feel it does have it does tie back into that sort of perfectionism and oh my I you, it's not that you don't care, but it's you care too much and you're worried about starting off and not doing it right.
It also makes me feel I have more control in a weird way. When I'm procrastinating, it's I'm winning. I'm controlling my life, and these due dates aren't controlling me.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. So what I have to say, I have no idea how it's going to connect, but it was the first thing that came to me, and I think it's interesting. I learned this week that I don't hate all Victorian novels. Like, I don't.
Interesting.
For the longest time, I couldn't read Dickens. I just couldn't get into like Victorian era literature, but we started reading Anthony Trollope in my rural English novel class, and he was a pretty good writer. I have to admit it.
What makes him so good?
There's just something about the style. I think it's the narration is very personal. Like it's almost like the narrator is a character, and I just find that interesting. And like all Victorian novels are really long, and Trollope wrote really long novels.
Yeah.
But it's actually pretty fast paced. It's easy to just flip through the pages, which surprised me.
Interesting.
Okay, connect the dots.
Dang it.
How do we connect?
Oral histories.
Do we have to?
I mean, sometimes
We need to just, before we record the podcast, we need to just like conspire. Yeah.
Beforehand.
Well, I admitted that my distaste for Victorian lit was actually just me, and not that all Victorian writers were bad.
Okay.
And that kind of connects to what you were saying. Like people will ascribe their faults to like outside circumstances or outside events rather than recognizing that it's part of themselves.
And maybe that could tie into those like two white, like I don't like two white women
Oh,
who like
the two
refuse
white
to like
women
work
who are,
under
like,
the
yeah, okay.
I mean, I don't think it's the same exact thing, but it's like I don't know, they're just like using this other like inconsequential like circumstance, like it's
Okay.
I mean, they might have just been looking for an excuse to leave that position, or I don't know.
They got their opportunity.
Yeah, because honestly, in this economy, like if you have a decent job and you're like just willing to give it up over something like that, then you were probably not wanting the job in the first place.
When was that?
When
she worked at the bank?
I don't remember. There were so many dates. She had kept so many letters and so many pieces of mail, photos. Like she had a whole collection of like just like documents of all of this stuff.
Did we connect it sufficiently?
You're asking me.
Yeah, I mean,
do you think you connected it sufficiently? Did everyone's story get connected?
The scapegoat was the connecting factor.
Yeah.
The scapegoat was connecting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we got what you need.
Yeah.
If you feel like you got it, that's
okay.
good. I think
I'm sorry. All right. This has been What We Learned This Week. I'll see you next week. We did it.